Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take sources, pull them apart, and find the real gems of knowledge for you. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating ancient Buddhist text, the Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhayasuttaṃ. Our mission here is to pull out this, well, incredibly concise teaching about liberation and figure out what it really means, even for you today. It's not just dry wisdom, though. It's actually quite a story. You've got a powerful God king, a famous monk, and this core teaching that gets repeated 3 times. Once after, believe it or not, someone shakes a heavenly palace.
Exactly. We're going to explore something that sounds simple but is profoundly powerful. How to actually be free from craving, from that constant wanting. You'll hear the teaching itself word for word. You'll witness this, well, pretty extraordinary meeting in a celestial realm and see how sheer spiritual power basically stopped a divine party in its tracks. By the end, you should have a really clear idea about non-clinging, all wrapped up in a story that's, frankly, quite hard to forget.
Okay, so the story kicks off in Savatthi. The Buddha is staying at this place, the Pubarama Monastery. And then completely out of the blue, Sakka shows up. He's the king of the devas, these heavenly beings.
Yes, and what's really striking is that Sakka, he's a king of gods, right? But he comes to the Buddha with this very specific, very deep question. He asks basically, okay, how does a monk get totally free from craving? How do they become completely secure, pure, perfected, the best among gods and humans? But tell me, he adds, in brief. He wants the short version, the essence.
In brief, right. And the Buddha's answer is just as direct. He says it happens when a monk hears and really understands one thing. All phenomena are not to be clung to. So all phenomena.
That sounds huge. What does that actually cover here, and why is not clinging the key? It is huge. All phenomena means, well, everything. Absolutely everything you experience. Sights, sounds, feelings, thoughts, ideas, memories, the whole lot. The Buddha explains that when someone truly gets this non-clinging principle, they understand the nature of all these things. So whatever feeling comes up, pleasant, maybe unpleasant, or just neutral, they watch it. They see it arise. They notice it's temporary. They see it fade. Dispassion, cessation, letting go. It's like watching clouds drift by, you know. You don't try to grab them or push them away. You just observe their nature.
Ah, okay. So you're not trying to suppress the feeling, but you're not getting swept away by it either. You're just observing its life cycle, kind of.
Precisely. And the result? Well, if you practice this, you don't cling to anything. Not to pleasant feelings, not to unpleasant ones, not even to ideas or views. And because you don't cling, you're not agitated. You're not anxious or stressed out by the constant push and pull of experience. This leads directly, the text says, to nibbana, that ultimate peace.
Right. They realize, okay, the cycle of rebirth is done, the spiritual path is complete, nothing more needs doing. So for you listening, if you're stuck in traffic and feeling furious, or maybe you get great news and feel elated, the teaching isn't saying don't feel that. It's more like notice the feeling, that phenomenon, see it's temporary, and recognize that gripping onto it, whether good or bad, can actually cause you more trouble, more agitation. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's a very good way to put it. It's about creating that little bit of space, that non-reactive awareness. And Sakka, the divine king, he apparently gets it. He expresses his delight, bows, walks around the Buddha respectfully, and poof, vanishes.
Vanishes, okay. But the story isn't over. Nearby is this other figure, the venerable Mahāmoggallāna. He's one of the Buddha's top disciples, famous for psychic powers.
Right. And Mahāmoggallāna starts wondering, did Sakka really understand that? Did he truly approve?
It's a fair question, isn't it? How do you know if someone, especially a busy divine king, has truly absorbed such a deep teaching?
Exactly. So Mahāmoggallāna, being Mahāmoggallāna, decides he's going to find out directly, using his powers.
And just like that, zip, he disappears from the monastery and instantly reappears way up in the Tabatisa heaven where Sakka lives. He finds Sakka in this amazing park, the Ekapucharika Park, and Sakka's just, chilling, enjoying himself with 500 divine musical instruments playing. Sounds like quite the party.
It does. But Sakka sees Mahāmoggallāna arrive, stops the music immediately, welcomes him warmly, offers him a seat, even takes a lower seat himself out of respect, which is significant.
Definitely shows respect. But then Mahāmoggallāna politely asks, could you please repeat the teaching the Buddha gave you about liberation from craving?
And Sakka. Well, he sidesteps the question. He says basically, oh, Venerable Moggallāna, I'm terribly busy, many duties. Bit of a brush off, really.
Yeah, and then he completely changes the subject. He starts bragging about his palace, the Vaishanta Palace. Oh, I built this after I defeated the Asuras. It's magnificent. He goes on about its hundreds of turrets and thousands of chambers and all the celestial nymphs, the apsaras living there, each with their own attendants. It's incredibly opulent. And he says, you really must come see it.
So Sakka and another divine king, Vesavan, start leading Mahāmoggallāna on this palace tour. And there's this interesting little detail. As they walk, Sakka's female attendants, the nymphs, see Mahāmoggallāna coming, and they get all shy and embarrassed, retreating into their rooms. The text compares it to how a new daughter-in-law might feel seeing her father-in-law.
That really underscores the kind of spiritual presence or purity Mahāmoggallāna carried, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even in this divine pleasure palace.
It does. Mahāmoggallāna sees Sakka is still just completely distracted, boasting about his palace, totally caught up in his divine splendor. He realizes the king is being excessively heedless. He hasn't really absorbed the teaching. He's lost in his own grandeur.
So Mahāmoggallāna decides it's time for a, let's say, more direct approach to get Sakka's attention.
A very direct approach.
He uses his psychic power, and with just his big toe, he makes the entire vast, magnificent Vedanta palace shake, tremble, and quake violently.
Can you imagine? This display of raw power, Sakka, Vesavana, all the other gods there, they are completely stunned, astonished, awestruck. Suddenly, the palace tour doesn't seem so important. They realize they're in the presence of immense spiritual might.
Right. So with Sakka now definitely paying attention, probably quite shaken up, Mahāmoggallāna calmly asks again. So about that teaching the Buddha gave on the brief liberation from craving, we'd like to hear it.
And this time, Sakka snaps right back to it. Fully attentive, maybe a little sheepish, he recalls the Buddha's teaching perfectly, word for word, exactly as the Buddha taught him back at the monastery.
So the intervention worked.
It certainly did. The shift is immediate. He goes from bragging about turrets and nymphs to reciting this profound teaching on non-clinging.
Mahāmoggallāna, satisfied now that Sakka does understand, expresses his own delight and approval. And then, just as quickly as he arrived, zip, he vanishes from heaven and reappears back at the monastery on earth.
It's quite the sequence of events, and there's a little postscript back in heaven. After Mahāmoggallāna leaves, Sakka's attendants ask him, wow, was that incredibly powerful monk your teacher?
And Sakka says,
He says, no, he's my fellow practitioner, my peer on the path, essentially.
and the attendants are like, wow, it's amazing good fortune for you. Did you have a fellow practitioner with that kind of power? Man, that Buddha must really be something if he's your teacher.
Exactly. It just shows the level of respect that this kind of spiritual power commanded, even for gods.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about divine status. It was about realized attainment.
So, to kind of close the loop, Mahāmoggallāna goes back to the Buddha, and he asks, just to be absolutely sure, did you teach Sakka? He refers to him as a powerful yaka, which is interesting about the brief liberation from craving.
And the Buddha confirms, yes, I did. And then, for the third time in the story, the Buddha himself recounts the exact same teaching, word for word.
The exact same words again. All phenomena are not to be clung to, followed by the explanation about observing feelings and achieving nibbana.
Yes. And you have to ask, why repeat it so many times?
It really hammers the point home, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Right.
It underlines the consistency, the unchanging nature, and the fundamental importance of this specific teaching. This isn't just one teaching among many. It's presented as the core insight for liberation, verified by the Buddha, understood eventually by the king of the gods, and confirmed by the chief disciple.
So this very simple phrase, all phenomena are not to be clung to, is shown again and again as the key to freedom from craving, from agitation, leading to that ultimate peace. Verified on earth, verified in heaven. Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the takeaway for you listening right now?
This deep dive has shown us this core principle, non-clinging. We saw it delivered directly. Then reinforced pretty dramatically, wouldn't you say? Shaking palaces and all that.
Definitely dramatic.
Okay.
And then reaffirmed again for total clarity.
And I think in our world today, which is just full of constant information overload, endless opinions, so many things pulling at our attention, so many potential attachments, this ancient idea offers a really powerful way to navigate it all. It's not suggesting you become numb or check out from life. Not at all. It's about how you engage with everything, your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, your possessions, even your relationships, without that desperate, excessive clinging.
Right. That clinging is often what causes the suffering, the agitation.
Exactly. It allows for more clarity, less anxiety, less being constantly pushed and pulled around by everything that happens.
Right.
Think about it with, say, your job or your political views, or even just scrolling through social media. Notice that urge to cling to success, to being right, to outrage, to pleasure.
So maybe think about it today or this week. Notice the feelings, the thoughts, the situations that arise, big ones, small ones, good, bad, neutral. And just gently ask yourself, what would it feel like to observe this with that principle in mind? This, too, is not something to be clung to.
Maybe the real strength, the real power, isn't in how much we have or achieve, but in how we relate to it all. How tightly we grasp or how gently we can hold things, and sometimes how gracefully we can let them go.